Rejoice with me, brothers and sisters. Today, exactly 1 year after I launched this Sunday school adventure, we finish this dreadful tale from the Word of God with a coda that leaves me wondering whether the tale of the tale should be considered a bang or a whimper. Anyway, I'll have a special announcement at the end of today's lesson, so the day holds great promise. Last week I took you through the first 2 chapters of God's grand rejoinder to Job, with the creator of 1 trillion galaxies puffing out his omnipotent chest and showing off various details of his glorious creation, some of which he got laughably wrong. After going on like that at length, the Almighty interrupted the flow of his own outpouring to challenge poor Job, who's been sitting or standing or kneeling or prostrate or whatever posture he's been in the whole time while this strangely ignorant Mesopotamian sky god spouted his empty boasts in paired couplets. Come to think of it, I wonder what posture Job did adopt during this encounter. If God spoke to you out of a whirlwind, what would you do? Kneel, bow your head, run for your life? We're on the final stretch. Let's enjoy it together. Moreover, the Lord answered Job and said, Shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. Then Job answered the Lord and said, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee? I will lay mine hand upon my mouth. Once have I spoken, but I will not answer. Yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. That seems for the moment to have satisfied this cosmic narcissist, so he goes on. And here's the moment we've all been waiting for, brothers and sisters, the moment when the God of all the universe, who knows everything about it, brags about his pet dinosaurs. At least that's the creationist interpretation of these 2 chapters. I guess in those fevered brains, the 2 giants under review here, Behemoth and Leviathan, one a sauropod and the other a theropod, presumably, seal the argument and end the debate. Humans and dinosaurs were both made on the 6th day of God's creation and have lived together ever since. Oh boy. Moreover, since God's bragging about these terrible lizards after the flood of Noah wiped out almost everything, it follows that Noah had at least a few dinosaurs with him on the ark. Else, how else would they still be roaming the earth in the days of Job? I'll read the descriptions of those beasts anon and let you decide for yourself whether God was talking about dinosaurs or just talking through his hat. In fact, I'll let you decide whether or not you think it was really the voice of the creator of the quantum universe who was speaking to Job out of that whirlwind. Then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind and said, Gird up thy loins now like a man. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. Wilt thou disannul my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me that thou mayest be righteous? Hast thou an arm like God, or canst thou thunder with a voice like him? Deck thyself now with majesty and excellency, and array thyself with glory and beauty. Cast abroad the rage of thy wrath, and behold every one that is proud, and abase him. Look on every one that is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. Hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Then will I also confess unto thee that thine own right hand can save thee. All right. That was God's almost unbelievably rude challenge to a man who was sitting in dust, scraping his boils with a shard of pottery, a man who had just lost his sons and daughters and everything else that had given his life meaning. God has to be the biggest, nastiest bully ever hatched in the unquiet fiction-writing mind of humankind. So here's what God is able to do. Prepare yourself to admire his prowess, exemplified by the greatest beasts in his 6,000-year-old bestiary. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Okay, a sauropod then. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. Definitely a sauropod, don't you think? I interrupted that verse in midair, so I'll start it again. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. Well, now we have a problem. To the best of my ability to determine, only mammals have external testicles. Anything like the sinews of his stones wrapped together. And not even all mammals have those, so God could not have been talking about dinosaurs. Just throwing that out there for people who think that details like that might be important. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is chief in the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it with his eyes. His nose pierceth through snares. Brothers and sisters, I've read the foregoing description many times and tried to visualize the animal that God is talking about, and I can't shake the impression that he's really impressed with a hippopotamus or maybe a water buffalo. I just don't see a dinosaur in this description, but Ken Ham and Kent Hovind certainly think they do, and who am I to argue with such luminaries? After all, one has a giant ark in Kentucky and the other rides herd over a dinosaur theme park in East Broken Toe, Alabama. Oh boy, that dinosaur didn't pan out all that well, so let's have a look at the other one. Canst thou draw out Leviathan with an hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? Canst thou put an hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto thee? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Will he make a covenant with thee? Wilt thou take him for a servant forever? Wilt thou play with him as with a bird? Or wilt thou bind him for thy maidens? Shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him among the merchants? Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? Lay thine hand upon him. Remember the battle. Do no more. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is so fierce that it dare stir him up. Who then is able to stand before me? Who hath prevented me that I should repay him? Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. Yeah, Job, if the sight of a Nile crocodile, which I think God is describing here, gives you the shakes, how will you ever stand before the invisible genie who poofed that toothy monster into existence? Answer that, Job. Back to Leviathan. I will not conceal his parts, nor his power, nor his comely proportion. Who can discover the face of his garment, or who can come to him with his double bridle? Who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about. His scales are his pride, shut up together as with a close seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They stick together that they cannot be sundered. This might be a good time to point out that the so-called scales of reptiles, including those on the skinny legs of today's flying dinosaurs, are a very different thing from the scales of fish and aren't even homologous. They evolved from completely different structures, and we'd avoid confusion if we'd call the so-called scales of reptiles by their more particular name, scutes. Of course, the scutes of reptiles are stuck together. They evolved from reptilian epidermis. Fish scales have a completely different evolutionary history. But after all, the Holy Bible has a hard time distinguishing bats from birds, so this shouldn't be surprising. By his neesings a light doth shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Yeah, I had to look up that anachronistic Elizabethan word too. It apparently had to do with either sneezing or snorting. I'm not sure which of those a Nile crocodile does, nor do I have any idea what that other obscure metaphor might mean, but never mind that. Things are about to turn serious, and maybe they already have. Those neesings were just the beginning. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. God seems to have stepped away from the natural world in that passage I just read, and is now indulging fantasies of dragons. Dragons actually play a large and interesting role in the good book, and that's a topic worth looking into. And as a little bonus, in the description of this video, I'm going to link you to a discourse on fire-breathing dinosaurs. I think you might find it both entertaining and horrifying. In his neck remaineth strength, and sorrow is turned into joy before him. The flakes of his flesh are joined together. They are firm in themselves. They cannot be moved. Didn't we just cover that? Only now it's flakes instead of scales. Looks to me like the Lord is double dipping. His heart is as firm as a stone, yea, as hard as a piece of the nether millstone. This observation doesn't actually come from anyone who ever did a post-mortem on a Nile crocodile to find out what they could learn about what it was that made the critter tick when it was alive. It comes from an imaginary deity who doesn't know that the heart of any animal is a complex and flexible muscle that is in no sense firm as a stone or hard as a piece of the nether millstone. I'm sure glad we don't get our science from the Bible. Oh wait, homeschool children do. Marjorie Taylor Greene does. And when I see a pandemic raging out of control in a supposedly advanced country, it makes me wonder whether all those people who were homeschooled are out there voting, and what role they and their erroneous notions play in this whole debacle. How about you? When he raiseth up himself, the mighty are afraid. By reason of breakings they purify themselves. The sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold, the spear, the dart, nor the habergeon. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble. He laugheth at the shaking of a spear. Sharp stones are under him. He spreadeth sharp-pointed things upon the mire. He maketh the deep to boil like a pot. He maketh the sea like a pot of ointment. He maketh a path to shine after him. One would think the deep to be hoary. Upon earth there is not his like, who is made without fear. He beholdeth all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. There it is, my Judeo-Christian friends, the best argument God has for why all us miserable human worms should cower before his invisible almighty self. Before you mess with the ground of all being, you better take a close look at all the big animals he created and understand that he could unleash those monstrosities on your sinful, unbelieving ass. Let's finish this thing, and good riddance. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes. There. Satisfied, Jehovah? Isn't that the way you like your humans? Abhorring themselves, repenting in dust and ashes. Sorry, but I've got a middle finger with your name on it. And it was so that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said unto Eliphaz the Temanite, My wrath is kindled against thee and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath. Just an aside, what was it that Job said that God reckoned the thing that is right? If words have any meaning, it can't be all those things that Job said right after the compound calamity that ruined his life, nor can it be his responses, at times appropriately heated, to his so-called friends, because after he had done all that, the Creator accused Job of darkening counsel without wisdom and told him to sit his ass down and listen. Forgive another digression, but that's why I excised those 6 chapters of theological navel-gazing puked up by a new character, Elihu, the son of Barachel the Buzite of the kindred of Ram, whose bit was evidently shoehorned into a poetic account that couldn't easily accommodate it. If I hadn't tossed those chapters, you'd think that God had started addressing Elihu in chapter 38 rather than Job. So the thing Job said that God evidently approved was that groveling apology that we got from Job midway through the Almighty's tirade and again at the end of it. That's what the Lord our God requires of us: absolute, abject, unquestioning adoration and servitude. Okay, back to God's charge to Eliphaz. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, in that ye have not spoken of me the thing which is right, like my servant Job. So Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite and Zophar the Naamathite went and did according as the Lord commanded them. The Lord also accepted Job. Friends, I have read the good book from cover to cover on several occasions, and parts of it many times, and I have to say that my regard for its central character has never been lower than it is after I read that afresh. The God of the Bible is a barbarian, just like the people who wrote the Bible. God is made in man's image, not the other way around. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also, the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren and all his sisters and all they that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house. And they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. Did you catch that little detail right there that just gave the whole game away? I'll read it again. And they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. So much for Satan's role in this sorry tale, or ours. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep and 6,000 camels and 1,000 yoke of oxen and 1,000 she-asses. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he called the name of the first Jemimah, as in aunt, and the name of the second Kezia, and the name of the third Karenhapuk. And in all the land there were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. Excuse me while I just sit here and try to tamp down a wave of nausea. I've thought through all the implications of those dreadful verses I just read, but I don't have the stomach to articulate them. I think you can figure it out for yourself. After this, Job lived 140 years and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days. My final comment on this stinking backwater of God's Word is this. If my math is correct, and when has it ever not been, I believe that Job must have lived sometime between the time of Abraham and the time of the Exodus, and I draw my conclusion from the simple fact that Job lived 140 years. If you'll look at the steadily diminishing curve of longevity of the human species ever since Noah's flood and plot it, you'll see a more or less steady decline from Noah's 930 years, Shem's 600, Terah's 205, Abraham's 175, Isaac's 180, Jacob's 147, Joseph's 110, and Moses's 120, you'll find that Job's age would be typical of someone of Joseph's generation, i.e., some 4 centuries before the Exodus. Verily, the Creator of a trillion galaxies is mysterious, and so is His revealed Word. Thanks for bearing with me, brothers and sisters. I think I'm done here. I started this survey of the blessed old leather-bound Bible a year ago with weekly commentary on the first 11 chapters of Genesis, then plowed through Exodus and touched on a few of the horrors in the rest of the Pentateuch, along with several side trips on high holy days. I don't think I have another thing to say. Any point I was trying to make with this project has surely by now been made, so it's time for me to turn my attentions elsewhere. That said, I do not and never have had a complete theory of metaphysics to offer. At the ripe old age of 71, less than half that of the biblical patriarch Jacob at his home gathering, I'm still just turning over every rock I can find in my path and trying to understand who we are and how we came to be the thing or things that we are. And I'm sure I'll die without understanding nearly as much as I'd like, because that's kind of the way it goes with us human primates. I'm less sure of many things now than I've ever been. Atheist though I be, I'm certainly not going to tell anyone that I know God doesn't exist, because I know no such thing. And unlike many theists of my acquaintance, I will not make claims about things that I do not know. I don't think He exists, have never seen any reason to think it, and I see a lot of things that make me think it's so unlikely that the question can be safely set aside as unworthy of consideration. But that doesn't mean that I begrudge people who find some comfort in their religion. God knows we can all use all the comfort we can get. I've certainly found my ways, most of them more or less socially accepted. But I have no tolerance for ignorance and stupidity. And when I see an existential threat hanging over all our heads like the catastrophes that befell Job, and know full well that with a modicum of wisdom we could have forestalled it a year ago, I'm talking about the coronavirus plague, of course, I start seeing red, and I want to know why people are like that. So many of the ills that beset us have their roots in our bent to irrational belief. That's where religion comes from. And the only hope the human species has of anything like long-term survival will lie in our coming to our collective senses, flushing out all the lies that people buy into, and start looking honestly at our predicament, which includes many, many inconvenient truths, cruel dilemmas, as a matter of fact. I doubt the Bible will be of much help in that respect. In fact, I doubt that it's ever been much help at all. Music is helpful, though. At least I found it to be. That's mostly what I'm about in this little corner of YouTube. And if you haven't yet joined me in that adventure, I invite you to give it a try. And whatever your course in life, may the odds be always in your favor.